Hello everyone, how are you all doing?
Hello.
It's time for a movie review. And we're reviewing The Purge, Anarchy.
The second in the series.
Yes, the first one came out last year, I do believe.
And they're going to release it like a franchise every year like they did with Paranormal Activity because it's done by the same people.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And it's similar sort of genre, you'd call it, horror, thriller, slasher,
more thriller, sure.
psychological thriller kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of ballpark. I know that was quite vague, but that kind of ballpark. It's a film about this strange, futuristic, sort of semi-neo-apocalyptic society, whereby for one day,
every year for 12 hours,
they have just like the title of the movie, total anarchy.
Yeah, just anything apart from the use of proper weapons like nukes and things, and heavy grenades.
All
and
crime is legal.
Basically, everything else is legal.
Yeah, so murder, rape, all that kind of thing.
If you want to murder your next door neighbour because he's punched you in the face one time, then that's great. That's
or
fine.
He's messing with your recycling.
Absolutely.
That sort of shit has got to be sorted out.
Absolutely. I mean,
you don't fuck with another man's recycling.
But anyway, onto the film.
Yes, I would summarise the film like this. It's a great concept.
Awesome. Genuinely so interesting. So many places you can go with it.
But executed in a very meh fashion.
Yeah, meh is a nice word for it.
It's not terrible, but it's not brilliant.
No, there was just lots of things that could have been a lot better.
Yeah.
That you sat there and thought, actually, you know what? I'm enjoying the film while I'm watching it. I've got no qualms with it.
Yeah.
I came away and I looked at it a lot more critically once I'd left than when I was there. But there were just lots of things that could have been improved on.
So we're breaking it down into the plus and minus points. So we'll start with the negative points. First thing, lack of believability.
Absolutely. I mean, it was very
in terms of dialogue, decision making, all that kind of thing. Second, the characters left a lot to be desired.
Big style.
And the third negative point is a lack of any real, proper plot that had any substance to it.
So let's go on the first point, really.
Yeah, we'll start with the first point.
The dialogue in particular, I think, was probably one of our biggest qualms because it
wasn't great.
Nobody said anything interesting. And I know that sounds a bit ridiculous because, I guess it's quite a broad film and people are going to be terrified and it's supposed to be more realistic. But there was no real good interactions. There was no, clever bits where, people are really talking about the situation and explaining how bad it is and they're relating their own, how they've faced it and how they've gone about it and their past stories. It's very much just, oh my goodness, there's these guys coming after us and oh goodness, what are we going to do now? There's less, they didn't do any development with the dialogue for a start.
I think that's absolutely true. And on top of that, I had quite a few moments where I was thinking to myself, people just don't talk like that.
No, absolutely.
And there was a lot of annoying dialogue as well.
Very annoying dialogue where somebody would say something and you just think, look, listen, I don't think you can quite appreciate the situation that you're in right now.
Yes.
You're surrounded by murderers who are more than willing to kill you.
And they were griping about the tiniest little things.
Yeah. And it's just like something that you just think, actually, do you know what, in that situation, no matter what your moral boundaries are, no matter what you consider to be right and wrong, in that situation, you'd let it go because at the end of the day, you're just trying to live, That's all you're trying to achieve here. And actually, you're impeding your chances to live by doing what you're doing.
Exactly. And I think that brings to the next negative point about the film, is that the characters, they weren't brilliant, were they?
No. I mean, there was a couple that we could kind of get behind. They were much more interesting. Their actual story themselves, I think, was a bit more interesting in terms of, there was a proper start, middle and end for them in terms of where they went from and where they ended up. And it wasn't really in your face. It wasn't over the top in terms of the character development. That one actually worked. They were by far and away the best characters.
That's two characters out of a group of, 6 or 7 or whatever it was.
Six.
Yeah. And
no,
the rest,
5, sorry.
5, right, yeah. So the rest of the characters... Well, I couldn't really.
I mean, the guy was alright.
The guy was okay, but
only because he was a badass, not because he was interesting or actually.
He was the badass, but even then, he didn't do a great job of being a badass.
Not really.
It wasn't bad, but I wasn't really.
Yeah. And then there's another a woman and her daughter, and they were just terrible.
I think they were by far the worst aspect of the movie.
Every decision they made was stupid. Everything they said was kind of stupid. It was just very strange. It was very, very strange. They just did nothing that a normal human being would do to try and survive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tiny little spoiler, but it's in the trailer anyway. So you have the badass character who essentially saves the mother and the daughter. And then the daughter spends the whole fucking movie complaining to the guy that saved her.
Who's, trying to come up with these moral sensibilities. It's like, look, listen, you
very
don't exist in a
odd.
world where moral sensibilities, certainly in this 12-hour time
In this
frame,
12 hours,
are a thing.
You just gotta shut up.
You just got to get on with it. And do you know what? If you have to kill a couple of people in a bit of cold blood way, then do you know what? You fucking have to do that.
She
because
seemed
you're
to
just
get
trying
over the
survive.
fact that this guy had saved her life very quickly.
Yeah.
Just again, I just couldn't quite believe
sure.
that. And then the last bit, lack of any real proper plot.
Yeah.
I
The
think
concept was great, but
concept's great,
the plot of the actual film was sort of like, right, well, they're
Very
just trying to
flimsy.
survive, but why? No real reason other than just because they were.
it was literally just situational. They
Yeah.
found themselves in the situation. They need to survive.
And there were lots
No
of things that
real
they tied
plot.
together where actually they did things that you wouldn't normally do, but they did it because it just worked better with the film. So actually, by itself, it made no sense. So like one
Sure.
bit where she's looking at these rebels that are fighting back, and actually there's no good reason for her to do that. There's no premise for why she's doing that.
Yeah.
But it just so happens to coincide that because she knows them, it works out for her.
Yeah, sure, exactly. But I can forgive that a little bit more because it is a concept movie,
Sure,
and that's
sure.
what essentially
fine.
saves it. Which brings us on to the two really saving
Graces.
point,
If you can call
graces
that.
of this movie. The first of which is that it has a fantastic concept.
I mean, obviously the concept is genuinely very, very good.
And the second of which
So interesting.
is that there are some gripping moments in this movie.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the concept. The idea that you have total anarchy for 12 hours sets up for a lot of interesting aspects for the movie and a lot of directions they can take it. I mean, they take it into really a very political
Oh, absolutely.
area.
It's very politically aimed. It's a bit misguided in terms of not only would it really be as bad as it is, and it's obviously a statement upon society which doesn't exist,
Yes.
but
It is critiquing a society that doesn't exist.
yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of saying, well, in our opinion, this is what society would be like in this situation.
It's making some sort of point on
Sure.
the predatory nature
Yeah.
of the rich and the poor suffering and whatnot.
And it makes a much bigger point about that than it does anything else. So, like, one thing I would have said about the film is that, if it was me, I would have assumed that the government would attack gangs and whatnot during this time. But actually, that doesn't seem to be the interest. Actually, they're just far more concerned with killing poor people.
Yeah, the people that are supposedly a burden on the state.
Yeah.
You presume they might kill gangs. Who knows?
But
That's
I
completely left
personally would have
untouched.
made a film out of that.
Yes,
I think that would have been much more interesting.
Yeah. And the second plus point is, there are some quite exciting moments.
Sure.
It's not all the way
not
through.
devoid
It's not.
completely,
It's not. Yeah, it's not devoid, but nor is it. An edge of your seat thriller that's just non-stop. There's a bit at the end that's really great, and there's a bit in the middle that's really great. Particularly the bit at the end, I personally really enjoy, and that was the most impactful part of the movie. Well, when I say some gripping moments, again, it's not like one giant thrill ride.
No, sure. But hey, at the end of the day, probably don't go and see it at the cinema. It's a good enough film to watch, so maybe watch it on Netflix. Maybe get it on DVD if you get it for Christmas or something. But otherwise,
definitely worthy of that.
definitely watch it, but don't go out of your way to see it.
And I think we're going to give this movie, 5.5?
Yeah,
I think
probably
that's
what it
a reasonable score for it. Go and see it if you want. Hope you enjoyed the review.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys later.
See ya.